Hello and welcome to the 5th episode of Squaretalk. My name is Philip, I'm your host as well as the content and brand manager at Squaretalk, the easiest way to get product photos on the internet. Today I spoke with Stephanie Cook, who is a lifecycle marketing associate at AdRoll, an e-commerce marketing platform that helps you to effectively advertise online. The first 25 minutes of the episode are very general. We talk about the role of e-commerce marketing, about paid advertising versus organic, and some of the tips for brands that are just starting out. The second part is more about retargeting, some technical terms, we go into loyalty programs, and then we talk about channels such as Facebook, Google, LinkedIn, TikTok, you name it. So if you are looking to take the next step in e-commerce marketing, this episode will be definitely helpful. So let's get into the episode. Here I have Stephanie Cook, who is a lifecycle associate, marketing associate, correct?
Correct.
Position from AdRoll. And we've been in talks for doing this podcast for quite some time right now. And in general, this is the very first podcast we do on e-commerce marketing, just in general. So before we had, how to do properly production, how to do creative direction. And I think marketing just is in general a huge topic that I'm sure we're not going to have enough time to, go over through everything. But I kind of want to touch base with the first steps and then go into more complex topics, which is, retargeting and everything. So Stephanie, can you tell me a little bit more about what is your role within AdRoll and about the company itself a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've been with AdRoll for almost exactly 5 years. I started the first business day in 2017. And the majority of those 5 years were spent actually in various account management and customer success roles. And recently moved into lifecycle marketing, which is, honestly, I kind of see it as doing something very similar as my account management roles, of just continuing to help marketers and especially small business owners grow and develop their vision of their brand. So AdRoll as a platform is a marketing platform for direct-to-consumer brands that are looking to grow and to expand. So there's a suite of products and solutions to help tackle every stage of your marketing, whether you're looking to bring new visitors to your website or if you're looking to grow brand loyalty. So my entire world for the last 5 years has been helping small businesses, e-commerce grow.
And I think that's a cool position to come from because, among our listeners, we have both people who already have experience in marketing and those who are just starting to, grow their brands. So I think it's cool that you come from a position where you can sort of explain the harder terms, the harder, complex, essentially, programs to someone who is, somewhat unfamiliar. And that's kind of what I want to start with because marketing can seem a little bit scary if you know nothing about it and then you have like all these terms like UTM and parameters and stuff like this. And, so I kind of want to start by what is marketing just in general? And I know this is very broad, but if you were to explain in much simpler terms why you should market and what is it for you, where do you start?
That's a great question. If I had to boil it down into a single sentence in my personal view of marketing, it's being able to articulate and share your company and your vision with your audience, whether it be a new audience that you're looking to attract new customers or an existing customer base that you're looking to grow. So it's really fundamental. I think it gives sort of a backbone and a structure to your business because it allows you to communicate. It allows you to obviously sell products, but to grow an audience that's loyal to your brand and your vision specifically.
And you mentioned brand, and I feel like if you were to take a step back before even going to marketing, it feels like the very first step is understanding what is your brand in the first place. Because if you don't know what are your values, what is your unique value proposition, it's kind of hard to even market and communicate that. So where would you say the first step in terms of understanding what is your brand about is?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that obviously first understanding the value that you're driving, whether it be through a service or a product, whatever your business is looking to sell to customers, understanding the value that that's driving and understanding, almost humanizing your business. I think if your business were a person, what traits would they have? How would they communicate? What would it look like visually? I think first humanizing your business helps you to build that brand. I also think, though, that it's important that especially in the beginning stages to have a foundation to build off of, but still be open to learning and growing and evolving that. Because through marketing, you're going to start to refine those pieces of your business and your brand. So start with that foundation of what your vision is and how you want to communicate that, but don't feel like you have to be married to that for the rest of time. Be open to expanding it based off of what you learned through your marketing.
And I really like that you mentioned humanizing. And I feel like that's kind of the same approach when it comes to like understanding your customer, right? Because you have to essentially understand the profile of your customer to understand where they essentially spend their time, right? To be able to cater to them better. And so how would you define the first steps into, getting an insight where your customer spends time and, what kind of channels they use in the first place?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when you're starting out, I recommend having a presence through web, social, and through email. Whatever specifics you operate within, whatever specific channels, is kind of up to you and your interpretation where you feel you want to get started. But starting there will help to make sure that you have a strong presence sort of across the web. And then you can start to refine where you're seeing success, where it seems like your potential customers are spending time. You'll be able to refine that and start to figure out what channels are working best for you.
How would you, from your personal experience, how would you prioritize? You said web, social, and email, right? If you are just beginning and you have limited resources, right? And then if it's essentially, if you're a founder and it's completely on you to market your brand, which one do you go first into? Is it social media? Is it, going straight to email, or what do you think?
Yeah, definitely. So your first priority is going to be to attract potential customers and to grow sort of what we would refer to as your upper funnel, those new visitors that you're nurturing through to that point of making a purchase or signing up for a program, whatever your desired action is. So organic social is a great place to start. Just creating a profile, starting to share again, sort of that humanized idea of your brand and getting that out there. That's a great place to start. Email is going to kind of come after that, and that you need those people to come to your website first before you can start sending them emails.
So build essentially already a following before you engage with them through email, right?
Right. But don't neglect those channels like email. You want to make sure that you have sort of a foundation there once you get those first few customers in.
And you mentioned organic, and so I'm sure we're gonna, touch base with this. So marketing in general is kind of split into the organic content that you put out and into market and the paid advertising, right? So what you say falls under the category of organic marketing?
Yeah, I would classify organic as anything that you're not having to pay for. I think that's a good way to think of it. You can kind of divide your efforts into your paid efforts and then your organic. But again, going back to that, humanizing your brand and your business, creating Instagram profiles, creating Facebook, and just posting there without necessarily paying to boost the post, you can attract quite a large audience just off of that alone. And
is there a world? Yeah, apologize. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say there's so many different social media channels to choose from. But again, I think that small business owners, especially, or those that are starting out, you definitely can trust yourself and your perception of your brand, and wherever you feel you want to start and wherever makes the most sense for your brand to start, just go with that. Lean into that. You know your brand. You know the vision that you have, and you can trust to follow that intuition.
Is there a world where organic marketing is enough?
Potentially, I think that especially, we see those kind of unicorns that go viral, for lack of a better term, and attract a pretty large audience. But eventually you're going to want to expand that, and you're going to want to test to make sure you're really attracting the best audience possible. And again, getting that audience in the first place is half the battle. You want to then make sure that you're turning those customers into lifelong loyal customers that continue to come back to you. And at some point that's going to involve paid channels as well.
What does it take to turn someone from a customer that is somewhat familiar with your brand to a loyal customer?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's very much nurturing that visitor even after they purchase. I think we have a tendency to, after somebody makes a purchase, or again, whatever sort of the goal of your business is, to back off and kind of assume that at that point, if they enjoyed their experience, they're going to just come back naturally. But as we all know, we're all extremely busy, and it's easy to forget even a really great experience that you had. So you have that fantastic experience throughout the customer journey, but once they complete that action, make sure that you gently follow up with them while providing value. Again, email is a great place to do that, social as well. You can even do a little bit with retargeting, but don't be afraid to continue to nurture them.
And so, speaking of socials, just in general, that's something that we discussed with one of our guests before, who was Dylan York. He was creative director at Corksicle. And I kind of want to touch base with this again. Is there a world where you're spreading yourself too thin? Should you focus on a few, main socials, or should you be present literally everywhere possible?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's absolutely a world where you spread yourself too thin, especially in the beginning when you maybe are a little bit limited in bandwidth and resources. You can surprisingly reuse a lot of your content. It's easy to turn something from an Instagram organic post to paid Facebook. So definitely reuse the content that you have. But if you're starting to feel that you're not able to get value from all of the channels you're running, don't be afraid to pull back and invest more of that time into what's working for you, and then revisit it again in the future.
And that's kind of coming back to what we spoke in the first place, which is understand your brand, understand where your customers spend time, realize that, okay, so this is the main source that you're going to, engage with them, right? And then kind of focus on that. And once you have that organic foundation and you start to allocate a little bit of money to, actually paid advertising, which one do you choose? Because there's putting money into PPC in terms of Facebook. There's the Google stuff, even going to like Shopify or Pinterest, So where would you recommend beginning with, the first kind of chunk of money allocated for marketing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that if you are seeing a lot of organic success on social media channels, start just boosting those posts. Start to, again, kind of go with what's working for you and expand that. I would definitely suggest that you don't neglect web. I think it's easy to get kind of caught up in the world of social media, but start to implement a little bit of web-based targeting, whether it's more of that upper funnel brand awareness, or if you start to get into more of like the retargeting campaigns. AdWords is a fantastic channel. It is in and of itself almost a full-time job. So don't feel pressured to go there. But start with just boosting what's working for you, and then slowly start to expand into what you feel you might be missing.
Okay, so two quick questions to follow up on that. First one is, what do you, in your idea, what falls under the category of web marketing?
Yeah, great question. Anything that's not social media, I think is the easiest way to think about it. Anything that's not social media or email. Google definitely comes to mind first, but of course there are other networks that your potential customers could be spending time on. So ads, their affiliate marketing through similar websites, things like that.
Okay, and so I want to start, breaking down some of the terms that you're mentioning. So I heard two, AdWords. So by AdWords, you mean search engine optimization just in general using proper keywords. And, it makes more sense in terms of like, for example, Squareshoot or AdRoll, where we have the resources to like write blogs and, and have a lot of landing pages. When it comes to e-commerce stores or brands, how would you say approaching AdWords is like, what is the best way to approach that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Again, I would definitely, I would not try to tackle that first. And I would, your Google Analytics has quite a bit of information actually that I think not a lot of people realize they have access to, that can start to suggest keywords. And you can, again, just kind of start small, start to test a few keywords, and then go from there.
Okay. And the second one was affiliate marketing. Right. And again, I want to, sort of connect this to more of an e-commerce world where, I feel it's not very clear how would you do affiliate marketing in terms of your actual, stores. So what is your idea of it?
I think we often jump to influencer marketing in this day and age. I think that most people kind of immediately go to influencers. Affiliate marketing is similar, but more partnering with other businesses, other websites. So for example, if you are in like a home decor space, apartment therapy is obviously a huge player in that area. And so starting to get your brand mentioned in places like that can build trust in your brand and drive more of that traffic back to your website.
And so, I mean, you of all people know how much e-commerce has changed within the last few years, which is kind of, insane. What would you say the biggest shifts were? And did COVID have any impact on that? What were some of the, the biggest trends that emerged within the last few years?
Absolutely. COVID definitely, that was a huge game changer. Surprisingly or unsurprisingly, it actually seemed to benefit certain businesses. People were at home and were shopping more frequently. And so some people saw a push or a boost. I think that that's where we started to see kind of what we mentioned before, more of that humanizing of a brand. Consumers started to become more aware socially and want more authenticity from the brands that they were purchasing from, rather than more like a nameless corporation. Wanted to see the humans behind that business and wanted to have something that they could kind of buy into, both as a consumer, but also just as an individual supporting a business that they believed in.
And so also I kind of want to, humanize and in general, the authentic content that we're talking about. And there's like this huge separation between the highly produced content, which is like advertising shots. And we're talking even, the product photography that SquareShot provides is more on the higher production size than, just in general, the influencer kind of content. What do you think has more success right now? Going into very raw, very real, very like faced forward kind of content, or having, a presence in terms of like, the shots that, product shots, hero shots, advertising shots?
Yeah, I think, to be totally honest, I think you need a healthy mix of both. I think going in just any one direction, you're going to be missing an element. But of course, you want sort of that, again, that humanized, I know I keep saying that, you want that more authentic approach, but you also, again, need to build that trust in your brand. And so having that more professional side of things is critical. And also, I think that you want to be able to show off what you've worked so hard on, and product photography, especially professional product photography, allows you to do that. So having a healthy mix of both is critical.
And I also feel like having a face to represent a brand in general, not showing as if this is a company that is run by people but nobody knows about them. I feel like that has a huge impact. And I want to bring as an example the streaming world. And for example, we work right now with a company called Metal Umbrella, which is a merchandising brand owned by Cypher PK, who's a streamer. And essentially, the company has seen immense success, and they sold out all their releases because there's a face that people can associate themselves with, right? And then so you kind of build that trust. So I feel like brands should push their personas that are the creators of brands in the first place to create that, not just a facade, but like almost that, I don't know how do you put it in the proper words, but just having a face, literally.
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially showcasing the founder and all the hard work that you've done, being able to articulate that, because people love that and people want to support that. So everything from, the founder of the company, even to the social media manager. If you find you do see a lot of success through social, people love feeling that they're engaging with somebody with a vision and a passion. And like you said, not just sort of a business, a faceless business.
And this feels like more of an organic content. And when it comes to actually going into paid content, paid advertising in general, what kind of content works best? Because it's kind of hard to monetize, not monetize, but, take very raw, authentic content and, do ads with it, right? What kind of stuff works?
Definitely. Yeah. I think if you try to translate your authentic content into paid, it kind of undermines it.
Yeah.
For your paid content, you definitely want to have a mix of what I would call lifestyle imagery. So you think product photography being the product itself showcased in a way that you can easily see it, and then lifestyle imagery being more the product in use, something that the consumer can see themselves in. If you have the assets to do so, and in this day and age, I think it's a bit easier to come by, video assets are a great educational tool, especially for when you're trying to bring new visitors to your website.
Mhm.
You can convey a lot more information about your product, your brand, your vision through a video format than through lifestyle imagery. So you want to have a healthy mix of all three.
I was just gonna bring that because there's so many studies that come out about the huge success that video had in the past few years, and how most companies are completely transitioning to video, and it has way more engagement rate. And I'll be sure to link any of these studies later on at our footnotes and anything. Okay, but so do you actually put all your eggs in the basket in terms of video, or do you have also like a healthy mix of both?
I would strongly recommend having a healthy mix of both. Because not everyone is going to, if you think about especially digital marketing online, not everyone's going to have the time to watch a video, and you still want to be able to communicate your product through other means, through lifestyle and product imagery. Also, video is a bit more of an expensive placement. It's going to cost a bit more. So you want to be strategic in how you're using your resources. I wouldn't recommend only investing in one particular asset or resource.
And it almost feels like the new social medias and like even TikTok, right? It's dictating the way we sell things, right? Having that incredibly fast-paced, video-based, where you have to deliver information within the first like literally 3 seconds, or you're gonna lose someone, right? That kind of also changes the way you're gonna market things. Would you say that advertising e-commerce products through TikTok is a great idea, or no?
I think if you have the bandwidth for it, it's fantastic. I've personally, as a consumer, found so many brands that I love through TikTok, and I've seen well-known brands even grow through it. To your point, trend cycles move a lot faster on TikTok than some other social media platforms. And so make sure you have the bandwidth to keep up with it, both as a consumer and a marketer. And I would say don't do it just to do it. If you feel it resonates with your brand, if you have an idea you're excited about and you want to test it out, definitely try it. But if you're doing it to kind of keep up, then you might want to wait a little bit until you have the bandwidth and the resources, or it may just not be the best fit for your brand.
Exactly, and I've seen more mainstream and more old school brands try to promote their products through TikTok, where it's not even their audience, right? And so this kind of goes back to, what is your brand, what are you selling, and who is buying it? And if the people that you've analyzed and you realize that, this is not the people who spend their free time on TikTok, then you shouldn't probably, invest there. So I feel like that's kind of the approach that should be taken with TikTok. And also there's a big question here. How do you make the most out of a very little amount of, just paid advertising money? What is kind of the approach here? Do you kind of spread it out across multiple platforms? Do you put it all into, like, for example, PPC Google? What is kind of the way to go here?
Yeah, it depends on what your current needs are, I would say. If you're just starting out and you kind of need to tackle all fronts, I would look at, and I know that I'm biased, but this is a genuine recommendation. I would look at a marketing platform that allows you to run multiple channels under one umbrella, because it's going to allow you to share budget between channels rather than trying to put, $5 a day here and $10 a day here and then check in every hour and readjust. It allows you to see where all of that money is going and even have some automatic adjustments. But it's always going to cost more to bring new traffic to your website. So if you're just starting out, invest more heavily in bringing new traffic. And then as you start to learn more about what traffic actually converts or purchases from you, you can start to reinvest that money that you make and grow out your strategy a bit more.
And that's actually a really good point. And I want to follow up on that. Essentially, there's a way where you invest money and go into like conversion or like traffic generation. Where do you start to invest into just brand awareness? Because that feels like I don't want to say a waste of money early on, but you should definitely be making the most out of your money in terms of like, putting it into traffic or conversions. Where is that line where you start actually thinking about, just having a better just sharing a better message and showing that, the brand exists throughout multiple channels?
I think that brand awareness component is really critical early on, because you could have the most sophisticated nurture retargeting campaign set up, but if you're not driving the right traffic to your website, it's not going to do much for you. So initially investing in that brand awareness and then seeing who purchases will also give you it will help you learn and better understand your brand and how it translates to potential customers. So I would suggest investing in it early on in the beginning so you can start to get your brand out there. And then readjust as you see kind of what happens organically from that point.
And kind of another point that I want to, come back to is e-commerce trends. So since e-commerce has, changed quite a bit, and there are big players that impacted that, and, TikTok is one of them. What is like one of the biggest emerging trends that you've noticed within the few recent months or years? And I know that's a kind of a big question.
No, it's a great question, though. I think that from a more like technical strategic perspective, I would say having a consistent strategy across multiple channels. I think typically we've kept channels really siloed. We see email over here, we see organic social over here, paid retargeting over here, and they don't really communicate and they have separate strategies. I'm seeing more and more marketers start to use all of their channels to communicate more of a cohesive message. And especially as e-commerce and digital marketing every year gets busier and louder, having that consistency and having that consistent message across your channels helps to make sure that your message can push through that noise. So I'm starting to see more people kind of connect the dots there.
And that's also kind of a big point to be made, that there's a sort of amount of investment that has to be made in terms of brand identity beforehand, because you can't market a message that doesn't, one, exist. Second, putting money into a bad message is also kind of a waste of money. So there's a lot of work that has to be done before you even jump into marketing. And I'm sure we'll have more time to discuss it a little bit later. So I want to go back into how you can make the most money out of the paid advertising that you do, and how do you analyze your business and the effectiveness of your campaigns. So what would you say is the best way to analyze that?
Yeah, absolutely. So every platform you run is going to have reporting and is going to have some sort of reporting source that will tell you how it's performing. But at some point, you'll want to have a more unified view where you can see how all of the channels you're running create a customer journey, because your customers don't ever interact with just one channel. The easiest and free way to do that is through UTM tags, which are snippets you add to the end of your landing page URLs for your ads. So when you upload an ad or start a campaign, you specify where it needs to link to. You'll add the UTM tag to the end of that. And there are lots of builders out there to help you get started with UTM tags.
And so it can be anything. Doesn't have to be even paid advertising. You can add those tags to, like, for example, your Instagram, right? And your link tree kind of where it shows, how much money are you making even from your organic content, right? So it can be literally added to anything. And even if you're not running paid ads, you can still monitor what are the channels working early on just from organic traction, right? And so then apply that knowledge to your paid advertising, right? And you would just say that Google Analytics is like the best way to, or are there any other websites that can help you with that?
Yeah, there are plenty of free tools out there that will help you track your UTM data. Google Analytics is one of them. To your point, yes, absolutely tag your organic channels as well. I would say tag everything that isn't an internal page. Any link back to your website, make sure that it's UTM tagged, and keep track of the parameters that you use, because that consistency, for example, you could put Facebook, or you could put FBook, or there are so many ways you could spell that out. Keep track of it, make sure that you are consistent with your parameter, and then you'll be able to see that bigger picture of all of your marketing channels.
I mean, even using something like as simple as like Bitly, right? Which kind of helps you to track how many clicks you got, because just having no insight into how much traction your organic content is getting is almost like you're wasting essentially that data that can be put into later into your paid ads. And so I also want to talk about a little bit about loyalty programs, which is something that you've mentioned before. So what role does loyalty programs play in the success of e-commerce marketing?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what we mentioned before, that you getting somebody to purchase from you the first time is just the first milestone, but you want to make sure that you continue to engage with them so they become that loyal customer. So there are so many ways you can do that. Social is obviously a great one. Email, I think, is probably the one that comes to mind first if somebody's subscribed to your newsletter. You can also do that through retargeting, though, which I find not many people realize or know that there are so many different types of retargeting campaigns you can run. And if you have a web retargeting campaign that mirrors the messaging you're using through social and email, then again, you have that really cohesive customer experience that keeps your brand top of mind and creates those lifetime value customers.
And so would you say that using A/B testing for retargeting is also a good idea here if you have the bandwidth to create different kinds of content?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a huge fan of A/B testing. I strongly recommend it. Even once you feel that you have a really strong idea of your brand and your audience, you can still always refine that. And surprisingly, you don't need that many assets to run an A/B test. It could be as simple as testing this image against this image, or using this one word to describe your product versus this one. I recommend A/B testing, but I also recommend being strict with it and making sure you're only testing one thing at a time so that you can really understand what's working rather than kind of having to guess which element was most successful.
But also, is there like a threshold under which you can't really do A/B testing? Because, for example, if you were to use 30 people as your focus group, right, and then you split it into 15, you're not really getting insight because there's so much like randomness that can be in that. When do you think it's a good idea to start A/B testing? Once you have what kind of audience?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that if you can have probably 100 visitors in each group, that's probably going to be the best place to start. I think another critical part of that is just making sure you give the test enough time. To your point, if you run a test for a day and you only see sort of 15 people in each group, not only is that a small sample, but it's also, there are so many other variables that could have taken place that day. So probably 100 visitors each group, and then I would give it 2 to 4 weeks before you really draw any conclusions.
Okay, and so I feel like I want to like reiterate on the point that it can be something very small. Even if you're like, for example, doing a product photo shoot and you have the opportunity to switch backgrounds from white to a colored background, right? Even something like that can have like a very drastic impact on the way your targeting and marketing just is done. So you literally change of a small word, switching from action word to a non-action word or the other way around, little things like that kind of have a huge, impact on that. And so let's come back to retargeting because that's a big one. And let's talk about what are some of the creative ways to do retargeting?
Yeah. So usually when we talk about retargeting, going back to my account management days, we would have what we'd call an evergreen retargeting campaign. So that's one that you run sort of regardless of seasonality, holiday promotion. That's just kind of your foundational campaign that you are nurturing your traffic through. But outside of that, I find a lot of people kind of stop there, but you can run so many different types of retargeting campaigns. Going back to loyalty for a second, if you have an audience that has purchased from you, you can kind of hold off on engaging with them for maybe 30 days, 60, however long you find it takes before people re-engage with your brand, and then start to retarget them again. And again, mirror that messaging that you're using in email to create that really cohesive experience.
Would you say that, let's say you have $1,000, right? And so how much of that should actually be put into retargeting, so essentially bringing back the already existing customers, and how much should go into user acquisition, which is, getting the new customers?
Yeah, it very much depends on what your current traffic looks like, and if you need to bring more traffic to your website, or if you have kind of a steady stream of organic traffic coming in. I do recommend, though, to try to mirror your budgets for brand awareness and retargeting. So if you are spending $500 on brand awareness, spend $500 on retargeting. I would start with a 50-50 split initially, and then as you see performance, you can start to adjust those budgets.
Okay. And so would you adjust it towards, putting more into retargeting just in general, or how would you put it once your brand starts to grow?
It's the way we look at budgets for retargeting and brand awareness is a little bit different, because brand awareness, you can kind of just continue to put money into it and it will continue to bring new traffic to your website. Whereas with retargeting, you can only retarget, of course, your existing traffic. So I would keep a steady kind of grasp on just the general traffic you receive to your site every month. And then as you see that start to trend upward, start to divert more budget to that. So you're keeping up with that growth and you're able to engage with the new traffic that's coming to your website as you grow.
And speaking of, so this question is like, even I'm very curious about it. Is there an equal sign between the money you put into marketing and the traffic that you get? For example, if we're putting $100 into marketing, right, we're getting, let's say, 100 people that visit your website. If you if you up that, is it the same kind of growth or no?
With brand awareness, typically yes. As long as you have ads that resonate, your creative obviously is going to play a huge part, and you have adequate targeting, you can usually continue to invest money there and bring new traffic to your website. With retargeting, it's rare that 100% of your traffic is worth getting back in front of. There are window shoppers, of course, people that have no intention of purchasing from you but are still visiting. So with retargeting, you'll eventually kind of hit this plateau where you could technically spend more because you do technically have the traffic for it, but that traffic isn't going to re-engage. So with retargeting, it's not quite that equal sign. You'll want to find where that sort of sweet spot is for your business. But with brand awareness, you usually can, as long as your other assets and targeting are sufficient.
And I want to, one of the topics that I want to discuss is also sustainability in terms of like the way you market things. What would you say is the most sustainable platform right now to market through? Would you say it's Google? Would you say it's Facebook and Instagram, also known as Meta now? What would you say it? I mean, LinkedIn, and we're talking in the context of e-commerce.
Within the context of e-commerce, I would say my marketer brain wants to try to justify, all of them because they all really do have a value and a purpose. I think that because we see sort of that brand loyalty and again, that humanizing component, social media, if you're engaging with your audience in an authentic way and you're willing to try new things and grow with the trends and the platforms, I see social media sticking around for a long time.
So Instagram and Facebook.
Instagram and Facebook, those are kind of the ones that have been around the longest and have continued to be profitable. I would not be surprised at all if we see TikTok join that rank. But again, we've kind of touched on TikTok and that.
And what would you say is kind of the role of YouTube right now in marketing and e-commerce?
That's a great question. I think if you have a product that requires a certain amount of education, for example, if you are selling like a camera, we mentioned YouTube, so that's where my mind went first. And you need your potential customer to understand why your product is better, not just visually, but understand the value of it. YouTube is a great way to educate and to convey that information. That's where a lot of customers go to research before they make a purchase. Again, going back to influencer and affiliate marketing.
I was just going to bring that up.
Yeah, that's another great platform to look into.
it almost feels like YouTube has one of the most loyal like fan bases. If you have a YouTuber, right, and they're gonna promote a product, it kind of, I'm not sure about the numbers, and I'd really like to look into some of the studies on this, but it feels like it has much more traction than, for example, any other platforms like Facebook or Instagram, because of just how much brand loyalty, actual personality brand loyalty there is.
Absolutely. I have YouTubers I've been watching since I was 14, and you bet that when they recommend a product to me, I take that recommendation to heart. And so if you can align, I think it's important to make sure, going back to the authenticity, if you feel that your brand aligns with a certain influencer and a personality, that's a fantastic way. And I think that, to your point, there's more loyalty and trust in YouTube, I think, than some of the other newer influencer types that we're seeing.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say is the impact of AdWords and keywords for YouTube? Should you be more looking into like viral kind of content, or should you actually be focused on building a very systematic kind of keywords SEO approach to YouTube?
I definitely would recommend being very intentional with your YouTube SEO. I think a lot of people overlook that and just kind of hope the video itself does well. I think there is a certain viral element to YouTube to take into consideration. But again, I think that where YouTube has the most value for marketers is in that loyalty that's been proven over time. So those trends and virality component are probably more applicable to Instagram and TikTok, and YouTube, you can lean more into those people that have been watching for 10 plus years.
Yeah. And so we have kind of a recurring segment throughout the podcast itself where we kind of break stereotypes about e-commerce, about product photography. So I want to, since you are our first guest to start talking about marketing in general, kind of want to break a stereotype about marketing and e-commerce marketing. What would you say it would be?
The first one that comes to mind is that it's scary or overly complicated, or something that you have to have been doing for several years before you can do it effectively. But there are so many different approaches to marketing and so many options that there's really a place that you can get started and you can learn and you can grow. I've also found that that business owners, especially, or marketers that are just getting started, maybe don't trust their understanding of their brand as much as they could. I think that there's a hesitancy and wanting to look to the experts first. But at the end of the day, your business is something that you understand inside and out. It's your passion, and you can trust your interpretation of it, and you can trust your vision. And more often than not, you already know how to start articulating that to new audiences. And you'll learn sort of the technicalities along the way, but it really isn't scary. It's easy to break down, and especially if you understand your brand and what it is you're looking to communicate.
And how would you say, if people were to like start marketing through AdRoll, for example, what were the first steps that, what should they focus on early on?
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, a lot of the same concepts translate. First, making sure that you have imagery and assets that communicate your brand to somebody who has no familiarity, and then starting with those brand awareness channels, starting to grow your audiences, and then starting to introduce retargeting, starting to nurture, and from there, monitoring your analytics, see what's working, see what needs to be improved, and just continue to grow.
I mean, I feel like there's so many more topics to talk about, and we're definitely going to get into them in the later seasons, or even in this season of Square Talk. I feel like within the last 10 years, we've gotten so many more different instruments to work with. Like if you take a look 10 years ago, where even YouTube wasn't even that big of a platform in terms of like actually using it to market your ways. And now even Telegram, for example, one of the, the biggest changes that now Telegram can use marketing, right? And can have those ads. Maybe that's a channel that your customers use most. So it's kind of the amount of instruments and tools is growing. And so it almost like, if we're talking like, for example, NFTs, it almost feels like right now it's kind of scary to get into that. But at the same time, just focus on something, Focus on one, start with one, and then start, growing your, go into like omni-channel and, kind of that. So what is like one of your last recommendations for, business owners or those creative directors, marketers out there who are looking to sell their products online?
Yeah, I think actually you teed it up perfectly. Just get started, because I think this actually applies to every area of life, but you're always going to look back at the first couple of things you did. No matter how well you do it, you're going to look back and see everything you could have done differently. So just get started, just pick something to your point, start putting stuff out there. You'll learn and refine as you go. And again, you know your business better than you think you do, and consumers can see that, and that translates better than you think it does.
Oh, those were well said. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your insight. And I'm glad that we kind of opened this Pandora box of e-commerce marketing. And there's, as I mentioned before, there's going to be so many more things to talk about. So thank you again, and have a really great week.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was honored to be here.